Yohji Yamamoto has always struggled against the idea of being Japanese. The year is 1981. Yohji Yamamoto's clothing had taken over Japan. He was making his debut on the pro league of fashion, Paris. And Yohji actually was not the first Japanese designer to show in Paris. Many had crossed the ocean before him, designers such as Hanae Mori and Kenzo Takada. Yohji had observed their debuts from the sidelines, and he did not want to go down their paths. You see, the French have historically always been massive fans of Japan, but they had an element of fetish-like exoticism to it. Their idea of Asia was one of Panda Express. And guess what? Takada and Mori just leaned into the whole thing, with Takada even calling his store Jungle Jap. And for their clothing, they straight up showed a kimono with a bunch of traditional Japanese prints on it. And for that, they were generally actually well received and successful. Well, what's the problem then? Well, Yohji saw that it was the most embarrassing thing ever to buy into that exotic fetishism. As he was planning his debut, Yohji told Rei Kawakubo, "We are not souvenir designers. Japanese designers bringing Japanese ideas to Paris is not comfortable with me. I don't want to explain Japan to the world." Yohji wanted nothing to do with the kimono. He only used European pattern making and materials. And what came out was a legendary Hiroshima chic collection of 1983 spring-summer, which we talked about in the first video of our series. Big, oversized clothes in black that enveloped the body, with these ripped out holes. It was so different, the French fashion establishment didn't know what to do with it. They thought Yohji was pointing a middle finger at them. And as we mentioned before, Yohji didn't want to insult Paris. He just wanted to present his own vision of beauty. Remember this interview from 1983 that we played in the first video of the series? Let's circle back to this interview because the hint was here all along.
Our type of wearing is quite unusual for Occidental people because our Asian way to wear is just like fabric.
Yeah.
That's all, and we have to wrap it, bring it, hang it.
Yeah.
So it's rather difficult, I think. But
Our Asian way to wear is just like fabric. We have to hang it, wrap it. It turned out that Yohji wasn't being completely honest. As much as he could try, even using European techniques, his soul was still Japanese. He did end up bringing Japan to Paris, but not the concrete signs and images like Mori and Takada did. He came with a distinctly conceptual set of Japanese aesthetic ideals, and it's been hiding in his work the entire time, perhaps even without himself realizing. It's certainly been in every video of our series, perhaps without you realizing. And maybe, just maybe, he couldn't run away from the kimono after all. So in the second video of the series, we talked about Yohji's vision of beauty for the woman, an antithesis to the Western body-conscious idea of beauty, one that appeals to the male gaze, but instead, a woman's attractiveness defined by her mind and her emotion, not her body. And Yohji did not invent this out of thin air. This actually comes from history, from the Tale of Genji, one of the world's first novels written by a woman, based on the Heian period imperial court. And over there, the ideal beauty was displayed through subtlety, refinement, and most importantly, the expression of emotions through art. And just like everyone else in history, those in the imperial court spent a lot of time trying to find love. But it wasn't going to be easy because the guys and the girls lived at different parts of the imperial court, partitioned off by these big screens. They could not see each other's faces, only hear their voice, and smell the scent of their personal incense. The act of courtship could be a poem composed on the spot, alluding to beauty and love using the passing seasons as a metaphor. And in the Tale of Genji, often the failure of the romance was more emotionally moving than its fulfillment. That is mono no aware, defined as the bittersweet awareness of the transience of all beauty. The examples are cherry blossoms, or the moon on an autumn night. It's beautiful because you can't have it or you can't hold on to it. It's sad, but that's beautiful. And Yohji agrees. He says, if every woman was as pretty as in a magazine, that would be dull. I feel pretty or beauty in a girl or woman when I feel her loneliness or sadness. According to Yohji, when one moves, the silhouette of the fabric lingers for a fraction of a second. There is beauty in that moment, the beauty of something passing away. Yohji's beauty is tied with that sense of fragility. To Yohji, the most beautiful view of a woman is from the diagonal back, the moment when she passes you by and walks off. That is mono no aware. And speaking of fabric, many times there is an imperfect quality to the fabric itself. The Yohji trademarked black wrinkled gabardine wool that we talked about in the first video. The fabric that started his career was his first Tokyo runway collection in 1977. Or maybe it could be like in 1997 for Yohji's Chanel suit, where the edges of the fabric are fraying away, even if it's an expensive, luxurious fabric like silk tweed. And of course, how can we forget about the Hiroshima chic dress with all the holes that pissed off the French fashion establishment? If the idea of Western aesthetics is approaching perfection, then Japanese aesthetics is the opposite. It's the imperfection of wabi-sabi. So not a lot of people know, but wabi-sabi are actually two separate concepts. Wabi comes from Japanese tea ceremony, which was intrinsically related to Zen Buddhism. The elaborate art of tea ceremony was seen as a practice leading to enlightenment. Emblematic of that is a style of tea ceremony called wabi-cha. You'd hold your tea ceremony in these tiny grass huts, quite literally, where the tea will be served in simple, unadorned, and sometimes even broken or discarded utensils. The idea was to appreciate a subtle, unadorned kind of beauty, a kind of quiet contentment. And the other half, sabi, literally is the same word that means rust, and broadly is referring to a patina that comes with age, like on old silverware. The idea was when something is aged and well worn, its true nature comes out on the surface. Yohji says, when fabric is left to age for a year or two, it naturally contracts, and at that point it reveals its charm. The threads have a life of their own as they pass through the seasons and mature. It is only through this process that the true appeal of the fabric is revealed. Quite contrary to Western designs that focus on the cut of the garment, Yohji's focus is on the fabric, and this focus on fabric goes all the way back to the kimono. The more you look, the more it's clear how the kimono has always been on Yohji's mind. So you see, the way you make a kimono is completely different from how you make Western clothing. For the kimono, all the pattern making was standardized. You couldn't differentiate based on a cut. Kimono fabric is always precisely 37 centimeters wide, and you cut these straight lines into it to turn into rectangles. Not much room for design here. So all of the differentiation was based on fabric. The colors, print, and materials of the fabric was everything. When wearing a kimono, if you wanted to catch the gaze of a guy, instead of showing your hips or breast, you'd leave a little gap here at the back of your neck. You could call that a color gap. Let that sink in, menswear nerds. By traditional Japanese beauty, the most beautiful part of a woman is not her boobs and butt. In the Edo period of Japan, the back of the neck was considered to be the sexiest part of a woman, and Yohji inherited that philosophy throughout his design process. In fact, he always designs from the fabric first. Yohji listens to the hand, the weight, and drape of the fabric. Next, Yohji designs the back of the woman first. He says that after designing the back, the front of the garment will often come together all by itself. It's incredibly ironic how for someone who wanted nothing to do with the kimono, a lot of his ideas actually stem from the kimono. How is Yohji gonna deal with this? But first, there's something we need to clear up. The Japanese idea of beauty is not just looking at different parts of the body. The entire notion of looking good itself is completely different from the West. The concept of Iki was also born in the Edo period. It's commonly translated as chic, but there's way more to it. You see, Iki developed as almost an anti-style to the beautiful elegance of the imperial court in Kyoto. In Kyoto, you'd wear your kimono impeccably. In Edo, you wear it wrong, where when you walk, your leg will peek out from underneath your kimono. There will be a kind of a sprezzatura to Iki, where something will be slightly off. There had to be an attitude of nonchalance, a dressing down of sorts, to not overtly stand out. However, unlike the Europeans, Iki applied to all sexes, and it was sexy to be Iki. So Iki, chic, was defined with contrast to two other terms, Yabo and Kiza. These are very important because to understand what Iki is, you have to understand what it's not. Yabo meant a kind of crudeness, a kind of redneck taste. It could be how your dad dresses. A kid showing up to his first interview in his dad's suit, wrinkled and too big, was Yabo, crudeness. And Yabo wasn't bad per se. In fact, Iki is thought to be only one step away from Yabo. One could transform Yabo to Iki with a single detail, a single flair. The opposite of Iki isn't Yabo, it's Kiza. And Kiza is in between Iki and Yabo. Kiza meant pretentious, being too much of a tryhard, too perfect. Someone fully decked out in luxury logos would be Kiza. Someone who always has the Instagram trend look would also be Kiza, pretentious. To Edo's Iki chasers, the fabric of your kimono was of paramount importance. While in Kyoto you'd wear bright colors and fancy prints, in Edo they preferred simple stripes or even better, a plain dark color, which were affectionately called mouse and burnt tea. And the tip of the Iki pyramid was the ultimate dandy, knowledgeable of all the pleasures of the floating world. He was called the 𝗔𝘁𝗁. He would go further with his restraint of color and dress in, guess what, all black. But when you got closer, you would see all the attention on the details. The different layers of his kimono will be made from different silks, all of the highest quality. Maybe there would be a playful pattern somewhere, but it would be hidden in the lining or the bottom layer, only peeking out when you walk. And you can start to see traces of Iki everywhere in Yohji, the subtlety, the evasiveness, the imperfection, ideas that we talked about for multiple videos so far, and of course, the black. Yohji says, it is always best to add something playful to any polished, coordinated look in man's clothing. Attractive, classic, and chic alone result in something dull. The man with a real sense of style will always combine a highly polished look with something a little less refined. Yohji is saying, you need a hint of Yabo to be Iki. So at this point, I think we can all agree that Yohji's design philosophy is completely inseparable from traditional Japanese aesthetics. And of course, the kimono. Yohji was always cut out of the same cloth as Hanae Mori and Kenzo Takada, so he had to face his own history. And the way he got there was sort of ironic. He says, sometimes I started to think about whether I should deny my past creations. Maybe I should break my taboo, so I can try a kimono in a collection. He ended up exactly at the same starting point of the kimono for the Autumn-Winter 1994 Yohji Yamamoto show, the very thing he was embarrassed to show in Paris 10 years ago. When we look at the show footage, I bet you're thinking what I'm thinking. This looks nothing like the kimono I know. Nothing like what Takada and Mori showed. What do you think when you think of a kimono? I think of its distinctive Y shape at the front, and the sash, also called obi, tied at the waist. Yohji subverts that. Most of the looks wear the kimono open in the front, like a casual jacket. And to be specific, a lot of these aren't actually a kimono. This is actually a haori, a jacket with short sleeves worn over the kimono. And when there is the Y shape in the front, there is no sash, there is no obi, but instead, a button? It's like a European shawl collar. And the Europeanness doesn't end there. So many of these looks feature these polished black combat boots and these black wide-brimmed hats. But as soon as the model turns around, you understand that the garment is patterned after the kimono. There is this very distinctive line running down the center back. While Western patterning uses one piece for the entire back, kimonos typically use two. This is because the kimono fabric, also called tanmono, has a standard 37 cm width. So you need two pieces to cover the entire back. This theme of East-West fusion actually comes from Sakamoto Ryoma, a 19th century samurai who helped overthrow the conservative Edo shogunate. Yohji says that he was inspired by Sakamoto Ryoma's mishmash of Western and Eastern clothing, especially his kimono and in his Western boots. And this East-West fusion also extends to the most important part of the kimono, the fabric. Yohji defies tradition by using Western fabrics, hard-wearing wool serge, a twill fabric used for military uniforms, kimono dresses that are made from knit fabric with a raw hem at the bottom. However, when he does use traditional kimono fabrics, he actually uses men's fabrics. For men's kimonos, you typically use heavier, more textured silk fabrics in muted colors like navies, purples, and of course, black. Doesn't this feel like a Japanese interpretation of his black army gabardine trench coats for women? And of course, Yohji didn't completely abandon Takada and Mori's traditional colorful floral print. Instead of being on the outside, he has a Yuzenzome print hidden within the lining. That's the epitome of Iki. And smack dab in the middle of the show was possibly the most striking look of this collection. After a plethora of looks done in Yohji's trademark black, this Japanese model with raven black cropped hair comes out wearing a black zip-up collar dress with a red knit obi tied around the hips looking almost like a sweater, polished black leather boots, and a persimmon red kimono worn open. Her brightly colored kimono came as a shock, and when she turned around, you got another shock. What looked like a one-piece kimono now looks like two pieces. So this actually comes from the way you traditionally wear women's kimono, which are made as long as your entire body height. The point was you're supposed to shorten it by making a fold over itself at your hips, secured using the obi sash. This is called an ohashori. It creates this volume and line that accentuates the back and the hips. But for this look, The obi is on the inside. It's not holding up the folded fabric. Yohji is creating a trompe l'oeil, where the ohashori is sewn into the kimono itself, using Western pattern making techniques. And speaking of the back, you might be noticing something. If this is a kimono, where is the line that runs down the back? Aha! Even if Yohji makes a kimono, there is no way he's gonna make a dead standard kimono. Yohji makes the back out of one piece. How is that possible if the kimono fabric, the tamono, is only 37 centimeters wide? He does this by turning it 90 degrees. So normally for a body of a kimono, you cut the body along the warp, that is the long vertical side of the fabric. Yohji, however, does the opposite. He cuts the body along the weft, that is the short horizontal side. He's making the kimono pieces in the wrong direction of the fabric. And because the warp and weft yarns have different amounts of tension, by using the fabric along the weft, it drags the fabric towards the back as you walk. The fabric doesn't just flow downwards like a waterfall. It folds and it moves by its own volition. I find that this look has a humble, unadorned beauty, not from showing off the body, but from a single movement of the fabric passing away. This is mono no aware. And finally, this look betrays the kimono with a punk edge from the black dress and the black boots. That's Iki. This has gotta be one of my favorite Yohji looks of all time. Yohji has a much deeper reason to this East-West fusion. You see, the kimono had become fossilized in tradition, much like the Chanel suit. To modern Japanese people, there was a single correct way to wear the kimono. They would even pay others just to help them put on the kimono correctly. At that point, the kimono is no longer a tool for daily life. In the words of Yohji's favorite essayist, Ango Sakaguchi, the kimono is nothing special. It lost out to shirts and pants because those are simply better, easier to wear. The kimono was not made to look best on Asian people. In fact, it looks even better on tall Europeans. While the kimono has power, a kind of dignity or prestige coming from tradition, Sakaguchi writes, if there's no real substance to sustain that area of dignity, it's only a matter of time before it all collapses. What matters in the end is not tradition or prestige, it's substance. And substance comes from reality, being useful and valuable for people in their lives. Function gives meaningful substance to the facade of beauty. This is the core of Yohji's reconstruction of the Chanel suit and the kimono. He injected substance into these fossilized shells. These kimonos have buttons, closures, and pockets. You don't have to make the ohashori yourself, it's sewn into the garment. You can wear them with colored shirts and pants. You could carry out your entire life in them. And at the same time, they conveyed Yohji's subversive yet humble sense of beauty. Because, as Sakaguchi says, beauty for beauty's sake is not sincere. It is not in the end authentic. Such beauty is essentially empty and has no truths capable of moving people. And perhaps the reason why this kimono show was so fondly remembered is because Yohji was finally authentic to himself. Irene Silvagni, ex-Vogue editor, recalls, Yohji's first kimono collection made me cry. I didn't know the first thing about kimonos, but that show felt like Yohji was finally being true to himself after many long years of resistance. Everything was all mixed up in it. Beautiful clothes, fantastic craftsmanship, and Yohji's personal struggles. I spotted Yohji backstage after the show, standing all alone. Seeing him made me cry. I just couldn't hold back the tears. And yeah, this is the temporary end of the Yohji series. Special thanks to Roger Yorke of Yorke Antique Textiles, and author of multiple books about the kimono. This video is only possible because he gracefully shared his incredibly deep knowledge about the kimono with me. He has just an incredible collection of kimonos on his website, which is also a source of knowledge, so please check it out in the description down below. And that's it, thank you for watching, 𝗵𝗀𝗻 out.